My name's Nicholas, and I live on a 100-year-old wooden boat, and I'm currently exploring the remote coastline of British Columbia. In this episode, we're going to talk about navigating the most dangerous set of waters in the trip so far, but first we're going to pick up where we left off last week. I turned north into Canada, crossing the Georgia Strait through Desolation Sound, opted for the northern route through the straits into Blackfish Sound and the Broughton Archipelago. We ended the last video visiting Mimqualis, which is a Mamalilikula village abandoned in the 70s. Many of those residents left to Campbell River or nearby Alert Bay, which is home to the Namgis First Nation, whose territory expands to the southern part of Queen Charlotte Strait from the Nimkish and Kokish rivers, kind of near the entrance of Johnstone Strait. We walked around Alert Bay and had a wonderful opportunity to visit the Umista Cultural Center. If you ever have the opportunity and find yourself in the Broughtons or nearby Port McNeil, it's worth the trip to Alert Bay just for this visit. The standout exhibit at the center is a big house that walks you through a potlatch ceremony with different artwork and masks and coppers that have been recollected over the years from the Canadian government, private collections all over the world. The potlatch was something that was banned in the late 1800s when the Canadian government was trying to assimilate all the First Nations and destroy their culture. In more recent years, there's been a big resurgence of hosting potlatch, which is a form of oral documentation marking or celebrating different rites of passage. And what's really cool is it also serves as a redistribution of wealth, where the more of your things that you give out to others, the wealthier you are viewed. After a fun evening in Alert Bay, we moved over to Port McNeil to reprovision, as well as to celebrate some birthdays and perform some repairs in the boat.
How did you do
Happy birthday, dear Bob! Happy birthday!
How did you make a cake?
Whoa!
You guys are too much! You must have been keeping the carrots in the bilge.
Okay, so we weren't very good at keeping a secret from Bob, and he definitely knew about our covert operation in making a carrot cake. I ran into the boat Columbia 3, which has an 8-cylinder version of my engine, a Gardner 6L3, and of course went on a quick boat tour. So I'm spending this morning drinking coffee and planning my trip around Cape Caution, which is one of the more exposed parts of my journey north. This is when I'll be departing the protective inlets and straits inside of Vancouver Island, going north around Cape Caution and then back into the inside passage that lines the northern coastline of British Columbia. And during that period, there's about a 4 to 6 hour time where I'm going to be exposed to the Pacific Ocean and all the big ocean swells, prevailing winds, etc. that come from the ocean, get into shallower waters and start interacting with all the currents from the tides coming up from Queen Charlotte Strait, and then all the water coming out of the inlets and narrows in the interior of British Columbia. The strategy here is to go through at the most peaceful time as possible and essentially hedging your bets or stacking your cards in favor of the best conditions for the crossing. There are 4 main things that we're looking for when considering the best timing to cross the Cape. The first is the direction and strength of the wind. The second is the size of the ocean swell. The third is the timing and the size of the tides, and so that is the ebb and the flow, and then the amplitude or the volume of water that it will be going in and out. And lastly, you need to consider a couple of location-specific things, specifically Slingsby Channel and Rivers Inlet. When they are draining or ebbing, all the water from the sound behind them is pushed through a very narrow area, and so a lot of water and debris, etc., are coming out of that space, which makes it a locally dangerous thing, particularly on an ebb tide. So what's important about the wind? The wind in this area prevails from the north, and so what you'd expect is it to come out from the open ocean and straight down the sound. What's better is a southerly breeze coming up and across Vancouver Island, which protects the sound from any kind of fetch or buildup of wave action that might take place. Another locally important thing to consider is the morning time is when it's most likely to be quiet and calm. The reason for this is is there's a cool fog layer that will come in and build up overnight that usually leads to a very glassy, flat surface, which is ideal conditions for boating, which means it's usually favorable to leave early in the morning, 4 a.m. or so, in order to get around the Cape before what's called a land breeze builds up. Throughout the day, as the sun heats off the fog, it'll also start heating up the land. And that land will create a locally warm air mass that rises, and then that cool air that's sitting over the ocean will come and backfill that rising hot air mass. For that reason, it's almost always best to go early in the morning. The second thing we look at is an ocean swell. The ocean swell is measured by the period and the wave height. So not only are we concerned about how tall the waves are, but how frequently are they going to be hitting us? Short periods make for a pretty rough sea state, and so it's okay sometimes to have larger waves so long as it's drawn out over greater distances. The bouncing that you experience is just a slow roll over the top of the wave and then down, instead of continuously crashing over short period waves. You can figure out what the ocean is doing, one, by monitoring the weather the days leading up to your crossing, and then zooming out on the weather maps to see if there's any big storms offshore that might be building up a big sea state. What's better than that, there are weather stations and weather buoys that will tell you exactly what the wave height and the period is, and so we're looking for a short wave height and long periods. Third, and a very critical but also very predictable thing, is the size of the tides and the direction that they're going to be flowing in. Typically, you want to have the tide pushing behind you because you'll get somewhere faster. But in the case of Cape Caution, it's very important to consider you want the tide to go the same direction as the wind. The reason for that is when the tide and the wind are at opposing directions, there's a larger sea state that kicks up, which makes for an uncomfortable ride. Argonaut is starting down here in Skull Cove, just south of Slingsby Channel. There's an early morning ebb heading north and out of the strait. So tomorrow morning, there's going to be a southerly wind, so we enjoy the protection of Vancouver Island. There should be that early morning fog layer that will come into the sound at night. That should calm our conditions. A trade-off there is we might have to rely on our instruments, like our radar, for navigation. Now, in the morning, when the wind and weather conditions seem to be the best, we're actually going to have an ebb tide, which is unfavorable in some ways, but we will enjoy the ebb pushing us out in the strait. Now, because I expect the conditions to be calm, I'm willing to go on an ebb, and then actually we should be rounding Cape Caution just at the turn. So we'll be at slack water and then enjoy a flood tide when the water's going the other direction up into the inside passage. We're going to have a southerly breeze picking up in the afternoon behind us, whereas it should be more protected in the morning. And given that extra time, I should be able to give a wide berth to Slingsby Channel, so that way I can avoid any debris and chop that builds up from this ebb tide that's taking place. So obviously there's a lot of trade-off decision making here, and it's always prudent to sit and wait until the right opportunity to cross. We have the wind in our favor. There will be a little bit of an ocean swell, but it's long period waves that are coming from offshore seas. I'll have the ebb with me, which is good for boat speed, but not the best for typical conditions. And then I'll also enjoy the flood as I round the Cape and go north. We're gonna make a departure tomorrow morning around 5 a.m., so we'll see how it goes. I left Port McNeil and departed from Tally-Ho probably for only a few days, we're not really sure. We are both working to set ourselves up for the rounding around Cape Caution, and Tally-Ho is here to do their shakedown cruise and try to push the boat actually doing a real proper sail in open ocean, whereas my boat cannot do that. I'm currently heading north across Queen Charlotte Strait, and I'll spend the next day and a half going along the north coast on the mainland to get myself in position as close to the Cape as I can without getting too exposed for a early Tuesday morning crossing. Heading over to Burnell Bay for the night and see what that's like, and then tomorrow probably off towards Allison Sound or There's a couple cool spots that I've read about that we might check out, but also might be hard to get into with Argonaut. Should be. I'm gonna just stand on the chain as the boat comes back. And that seems to have set it right there. So anchor set. This afternoon I went through on the dinghy a narrow set of rapids into Bradley Lagoon and continued to cross into this inlet just about 3 miles up, where we're in a pretty remote place. There's kind of nothing around us but trees and wilderness, starting to get into the more wild and remote places on the BC coastline. So the lagoon that we just passed through and the whole inlet, all that tidal water flows through a very narrow part into the sound, and so right now I'm going through it. I'm just going to turn around and show you. Here I am at idle. We're doing about 4 knots through here, which is kind of scary. You see all the water boiling. Anyway, that was a fun adventure, and back to the boat for dinner as the sun is finally starting to peek out. So it might be a nice little evening sunset and dinner on the boat. Good morning, everyone. It's currently about 5:30 in the morning, and we are getting ready to make our rounding around Cape Caution. We're heading to the Hakai Institute is our goal for today. I think Tally Ho is going to do the same. A little bit of mud on the anchor this morning. So we're about an hour in, just going past Slingsby Inlet, which I was a little bit worried about because all that water coming down from Allison Sound and all those inlets are pushing out, and all the guidebooks and everything reads that it can kick up quite a wave state, which I took a little bit of a wider approach, but I'm not really seeing anything. What I am seeing is a long period, sort of slow, rolly swell coming in from the ocean. It's making for a somewhat bumpy ride, but nothing too harsh, just kind of going up one wave and coming down the backside. Every now and then we get a set that's fairly big. And so far we're the only boat out here, not anyone in sight. All right, we just passed Cape Caution to our starboard stern and took a right-hand turn northbound and are now beamed to the sea state, which makes it for a little bit of a sideways roll. So we're about 5.5 hours in this morning, heading up the east coast of Calvert Island, and had several whale sightings all morning. We had one just coming up to Cape Caution, another half-dozen humpback whales just as we got north of Clark Point on the southern tip of Calvert Island. We're about to take a left-hand turn into Kwakshua Channel and make our way over to the Hakai Institute. We're going to spend our night in Pruth Bay. Tally Ho is probably 2 or 3 hours behind us, enjoying what hopes to be a beautiful sail. They should be downwind the entire time, and there have been a couple other sailboats alongside us that have been having a nice downwind sails. Should be tying up with them later this evening. You guys had some great wind.
I didn't want to do this in the first place.
After yesterday's crossing, we made it all the way to the Hakai Institute on Calvert Island, which used to be a resort that is now a research institute. And this morning had a beautiful early morning run to the west coast of the island, where there's this absolutely perfect beach for running and hanging out, and I'm sure watching sunsets. So after the run, we just came back and weighed anchor and are off for another long day, heading first to Namu for lunch, and then potentially Bella Bella by later this evening. So making up some good distance these 2 days, and onwards and northwards. So look how beautiful it is. Just gonna share with everyone a little rainbow. Right now we have a storm coming in behind us. It's raining right here, but it's a beautiful little sun shower with the sun shining out ahead on our way to Namu. A lot of fish jumping right now. There's some whales over my left shoulder. Beautiful sunny day ahead of us. That's all for this week, and join us next week where I'll be exploring an abandoned cannery, making my way up to Bella Bella, where Argonaut has served as a medical mission boat dating back since 1937. We're gonna get deeper into the history, check out Bella Bella, and you'll see where this beautiful place is.